Howdy again, it's Mr. Pete. Welcome back to beautiful Studio G. And this is tips number 886 entitled The Atlas Grinder Hone Revisited. I sincerely hope that you watched 884 and 885, or you may not know where this is all coming from. So it's a continuation really of those two videos. This was a fairly popular video with about 10,000 people watching each episode. So I hope I get that many this time too. So let's just talk a little bit more about this. I was surprised how many people in the comments said that they had one. I think it was about 12. Some of the guys just absolutely loved them, and some said it's just a worthless gadget and it's just taking up bench space in their shop. So the jury's out on that, and being realistic here, I will very seldom use this myself. First of all, I do not like belt-driven devices. I like them to be motorized. Antiques, not the new motorized stuff. I very seldom do honing anyway, and I have many other grinders, so I would not come back to use this. But let's talk a little bit more about the hone, because that's the interesting part of this. This is a 1/2 horsepower capacitor start motor. It should start instantly, but it does not. And one time it kind of stalled, so watch this. To me, that motor should just start instantly, so I think that the capacitor is bad. Let me show you a picture of what it looked like when I took the cover off. When I took the cover off the capacitor, look at all those little beetles that are in there. They're kind of like ladybugs. We just have a terrible problem in Illinois with these in the fall. Perhaps these collected in there even before I owned the motor. I don't think I've had that motor more than a couple years. Well, as I said, I think the capacitor is bad, but I can check it at my leisure with my Mars capacitor analyzer. Haven't used this in a long time, not even sure if it works. But I see there's another capacitor down here. I used to take this down to school and charge up capacitors and dare the kids to touch them. And of course they wouldn't, and then I would run a screwdriver across the two terminals, and there'd be a big spark. It was a great big capacitor, and you could hear the spark, you know, it just popped. And I was warning them of the dangers of opening certain devices and working around machinery that might have a capacitor in its charged state. A viewer sent me 3 pictures of this grinder hone that he has in his basement. So there it is. The wheel is missing. Many people told me that they do not have a wheel or the wheel is damaged. Well, I need a new wheel myself. I do not know if Clausing still provides them. I doubt it. But there were some model changes. So notice that this is a brass bushing, or I'm not sure what the part is called. Mine is steel, and there's a view of the underside of his dishpan, or whatever you call this thing. And notice that that's also a brass bushing on the inside. And I'm not sure why, because this does not rotate on the shaft. The shaft rotates along with it. As stated in the other videos, the hone here, which is 5 inches in diameter with a square hole, where are you going to come up with something like that? You really aren't. But there are 2 different grits here. There's like a medium and a fine. And both of them need to be dressed. Possibly these could be cleaned up by putting it on a big piece of emery cloth and moving it around. This, of course, is damaged, so that would be a problem. And the other thing with a 5-inch wheel like this is that you lose some space right here in the center, so you really only have 2 inches or less to actually hone on. And the other problem, maybe it's not a problem, the speed out here is a lot faster than the speed toward the center. So that could be a problem, let's say, with a very wide plane blade that you are honing. And I think what happened here, if you pick this up and lay it on its side, the hone falls out, and that's what somebody probably did. I mean, long before I had it mounted, as you see here. By the way, a viewer just sent me this picture of a 59 Renault Dauphine, and mine was a 57, and it was that same pale green color. It was a total nightmare at the time, but I really wish I had that thing back now that I think I could fix things on it, but it's probably been in the scrapyard for 40 years. You know, I had delusions of grandeur that I might do something else with this. Just set this aside for a few years. I might have to make an adapter or something here, but I thought, well, wouldn't it be great to use a disc like this? This is an iron disc. I don't know where I got it. I think it's 8 inches in diameter, and have that mounted on there. Now, of course, we would need an abrasive on there, but I could use round discs of sandpaper that have the glue on the back, and that would make a pretty nice hone, wouldn't it? But as I said, those were delusions. I do not intend to do that, but it also would be fairly easy for me to make a pattern and to machine it whatever size that I wanted and whatever size hub that I needed. But why should I care two hoots about using this combination tool when in fact I have owned a honing machine here for 15 or 20 years already. It's a BELSAW, and there are 2 different, maybe even 3 different wheels or discs that you can put on here. So this was designed actually to sharpen barber's shears or sheep shears. And now we're going to forget about this. We're going down into Studio B and talk about this and yet one other honing type of machine that I own and almost never use. So let's go down to B. Okay, I hope most of you are familiar with the name of a BELSAW. So there were 2 major companies that made equipment for sharpening, such as saws and other things like that. One was Foley, the other was BELSAW, and eventually they joined together and it was Foley BELSAW. So this must have been before that merger, and there's the model number. There's really no controls on here except the on and off. It's a rather heavy unit. I don't know, it must be at least 20 pounds, and I bought this brand new in a box at a garage sale 20 years ago for $10. But the thing is, the box was set, cardboard box was on the floor, and there was water damage to the box. I thought I had directions for this, but I can't find them. But this copper lapping plate was stored like this on the bottom of the box, and moisture had seeped up there and pretty much destroyed this copper side. The other side is cast iron for lapping, and now I'll show you this wheel. I think they even sold other wheels or plates, whatever these are called, in their catalog, and then the lapping supplies such as the powder and all of that. So, but again, this was for shears, but you can do a lot of other things on it as well, and I'm not ever going to do a shear. I use an Arelco or a throwaway shick. I think I mentioned this before, but this is an 8-inch diameter plate, and years ago, you can read it here, I put on a sheet of 320 silicon carbide abrasive paper, and it's glued down. Can be taken off and changed, which would be a pain in the neck, but there it is. And this little stop here is meant to set the, it's not touching, you might think it is, but it's not touching, but you simply set the blade there for the shear up against this. In other words, that's a stop. But you can swing it out of the way, as I will do now, and let me take this off and show you the other side. So it's just a nut and a washer holding it onto the shaft, but the other side is the lapping side. So you can do your lapping of whatever it is on this side, but you need that compound, lapping compound, kind of like valve grinding compound. Very heavy. This is 3/4 inch thick, and it's cast iron. Extremely well made. It probably was pretty expensive at the time. And I already showed you this one, and I do not remember the purpose of the copper. Maybe somebody can leave a comment. I looked all over the internet and I could not find any of the original instructions. BELSAW also made a wood planer and I think even a sawmill. Put down in the comments what else did they make, but it was a pretty major company. Oh, they were involved in key making and selling the course to learn how to make keys. I made a video out of this years and years ago, and you know what, I tried to find it on my own channel and I could not. I don't know what the title is, so if anybody knows and remembers me talking about this years ago, put the title of that video into the comment section below, please. If I was going to do a lot of sharpening and honing, I would make some other kind of guide here that would, similar to what you saw on the other one out in the Studio G. But I had no intentions of doing this, and I had grandiose plans for this in that other video. And you know what? I haven't touched this in 10 or 15 years. Almost forgot that I had it until I made the other video on honing. And I had intentions of using this type of product, although these are so stiff and they are not adhesive backed, and that's a little bit smaller. I think these are 7-inch, but you can buy this paper in 8-inch diameter, and it has the adhesive back. And I don't remember where I got this, but it's been a while, so a fresh one, a new one, could be put on very easily and it would be just right. And this is rather coarse, but you can get them in finer grit. Well, enough about this. I'm probably never going to use it. I have one other honing machine. Let's take a look at it, and you might remember me talking about it as well. So here's a 10-inch plate, cast iron. Don't know where I got it, but I love it. I put that adapter shaft in there. That's 1/2-inch diameter. And of course you could change discs on this at will. And the whole idea here is this shaft will go into this 1/2-inch Jacob's chuck, and this is held in the chuck of the closing lathe, and this is just a stop to keep the whole thing from spinning on you. So let's go over and put this into the closing lathe. It could be any lathe. The closing is especially nice because I can change the speed very easily. It has the variable speed feature. So if I want it faster or slower, that can be done in a matter of 2 seconds. This is 1 speed only. I believe originally this was just a right angle adapter for a large electric drill. But again, that's held in the chuck. And I've got that other stub just sitting in an Aloris holder here, so this cannot spin, as I just explained. And put that on like that, and I'll tighten it down off camera because it's kind of awkward. Okay, here it is mounted in the chuck, ready to run, and you can run it in either direction, forward or reverse. Now that might be a little fast. I could put it in back gears, but for purposes of discussion, that's good enough. Make sure the power feed is turned off. Well, there it is, and remember we have a variable speed and a reversible machine here, depending on which way you want to use it, and it's quite high off the ground. In fact, I just measured it as 53 inches from the floor, so when I work at it, it's chest high, but I can get very close to the work with my bad eyesight, and it's kind of a comfortable height, really. And I know many people are saying, well, that's not a hone. That's a disc sander in the vertical position. And I guess you're right. But nevertheless, it's kind of a handy tool, although I don't really use it. Now, a fellow could make some kind of a guide or holder to hold the work or the blade or whatever the job is, something like the teleprompter that I showed you on the Atlas machine. But I'm going to do it freehand for now. Well, that did a pretty good job of grinding the chisel. However, I think I ground a little more wood than I did metal. Originally I set this up with a little bit finer abrasive strictly to sharpen pocket knives, and it is fairly good for that, but it's hard to hold that consistent angle. But this is how I used it. Not so good, it needs to be stropped. But just to show you some of the possibilities for this, I know no one will never use this. I don't blame you, I'm not going to either. But anyway, that concludes this video on sanding and honing. So long for now. Finn, say hello to the camera.